That is the personality. Have a better focus to get it right. That's it. That's the person. That's everything. Okay. You know, I mean, that's what I think it is. You think it's something else, tell me, and then you can write that. I'll just repeat after you.
Nick Saban saying it like only Nick Saban can say it. That coming on Monday at his press conference. His team needs to get it right. With SEC play on the horizon, the margin of error now narrows, and mistakes will become that much more glaring. We'll bring our A game tonight on Tighter Insider TV.
Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tighter Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome into another edition of Tighter Insider TV presented by Buffalo Rock. Once again tonight, ice cold Pepsi Cola alongside Rodney Orr from TighterInsider.com. I'm Gary Harris. You know, Rodney, Nick Saban kind of reminds me of a professional wrestler every now and then when he gets revved up. A little rowdy Roddy Piper I think, in Coach Saban sometimes. Well, what a game this weekend. Reason to be revved up. Number 3, Alabama will host 14th ranked Arkansas. You talk about an interesting matchup. It's Bobby Petrino's high-flying offense facing Nick Saban's stingy Alabama defense.
Certainly a challenge. They're probably as good a passing team as there is in the country, and certainly have the right kind of players to do it. They're very well coached. They have a very good system and scheme. And, you know, each and every year this is a very challenging game for the defense. You know, how you're going to affect the quarterback, how you're going to pressure the quarterback, how you're going to cover their guys. This is a lot like pro football. This is what you get ready for every week.
You have to go earn everything. You know, you have to go execute, block them, throw the ball, catch it, and, you know, take care of yourself and execute yourself, because they're not going to give you any cheap ones.
A lot like pro football, Nick Saban says, 2 former NFL head coaches, so both these coaching staffs very thorough. And again, Alabama's offense and Arkansas's defense will play a role as well, but the matchup to watch is obviously Alabama's defense. You see the conference rankings. First in total defense for Alabama, first in total offense for Arkansas, first in scoring defense for Alabama, 6 a game, first in scoring offense for Arkansas, first in passing defense for the Tide, first in passing offense for Alabama. So let's start there, Rodney. Alabama's defense versus Arkansas's offense. In the 3 years that Petrino has been there, you'd have to say that Alabama's defense has had the advantage, because Saban is 3-0 against Bob Petrino.
Yeah, they have, Gary. And again, this year, obviously, you look at Arkansas, they're the only team in the SEC, Gary, when you talk about scoring offense that ranks in the top 20, as well as the top 20 in scoring defense. So they're a well-rounded team. I know we focus on the offense, but they are very well-rounded. They have a great running game, too, with Ronnie Wingo. He doesn't get a lot of credit. Last week went over 100 yards rushing. And, you know, the best way to stop Arkansas's offense is keep them off the field.
Yeah, it is, and you mentioned the running game. Niall Davis, who arguably was the best running back in the SEC, you could have made that case, goes down before the season starts. Wingo has stepped in, not as explosive and not as powerful as Davis, but certainly a touchdown threat. But still, it's their receiving core and their quarterback Tyler Wilson that catch your attention. They've got 4 receivers. All of them can really play. Wilson can get them the football. And, you know, you make one mistake in coverage, and they'll take it the distance.
They will, and not only that, Gary, you mentioned that. They're very athletic, as you said, at the wide receiver spot. 3 great wide receivers, Jarius Wright, Greg Childs, Joe Adams, but they'll also throw it to Wingo out of the backfield. They'll throw it to the tight end. They've used the tight end, so they're very difficult to defend because they use so many people and get so many involved.
How important is pass rush in this game? Not necessarily sacks, but not letting Wilson stand back there unencumbered, making him throw the football before he's ready.
Well, you remember 2 years ago when they came with Ryan Mallett to Tuscaloosa, the year Alabama won the national championship in '09, harassed Mallett all game long. And again, this is kind of that same situation. Tyler Wilson, not really been in this kind of an atmosphere, Gary, in this big of a game in the SEC, this early, on the road. Again, his first year as a starter, he's not seen anything like this yet. So it's kind of like that situation with Mallett a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You remember what Alabama did there. They harassed him. Eric Anders was on him from the very beginning. So I think, obviously, that's going to be the key. You know, Arkansas starts a freshman left tackle. So that may open up some opportunities, certainly with Courtney Upshaw and Dante Hightower. High
drama in Tuscaloosa on Saturday. And the winner will no doubt be on the fast track in the SEC West and will certainly control its own destiny, while the loser, he'll be starting from behind the 8 ball. Now, the last time that Arkansas beat Alabama was 2006. Houston Nutt was the coach. Bobby Petrino knows this is starting to become a monkey on the Razorbacks' back, literally.
You know, it's not a personal standpoint, but for our program and for our football team, that's a win that we need. You know, we have not beat Alabama yet, and we certainly need to do that. And more importantly, we need to start off the conference with a victory.
Well, last year's game was too close for comfort for Alabama as Bob Petrino and Arkansas at home just jumped on the Tide. First drive, you see the first position, and you see Wingo getting loose there, a breakdown in coverage. Alabama, it seemed like, was playing from inside a hole the entire game, but late in the game, Alabama made the plays it had to make. They picked off Mallett, converted it for points, and put this game away and won it 24-20. Now, the word out of Arkansas is they've got this game circled, but Lonnie, they've had it circled every year, and it hasn't helped them.
Yeah, they have, and you know, you mentioned last year's game, Gary, and you know, let's be honest, Arkansas, that was a game they had prepared for, and just like this year, their first 3 games are basically very easily won games. Certainly not top-notch competition, and that's the way it was last year. It's the way it is this year, and when you look at it, Gary, coming into the game, certainly Arkansas has been preparing for Alabama, you know, all along. So, as you mentioned, it is a game circle. But last year, when you look at Alabama's defense, you know, going up against that vaunted Arkansas offense with Ryan Mallett, I mean, 9 new starters, and they only scored 20 points.
And last year, you would think, looking back, that was even a better opportunity for Arkansas.
Absolutely.
You mentioned Alabama, all those new players on defense. Arkansas had Mallett. And they couldn't get it done. Now this year, we have not talked much about the defense. We'll mention it more later on, but they do have a senior-laden defense. They're better there than they've been in years past. Wilson hasn't lost, you know, they haven't lost much at the quarterback position with him, so it should be a great football game on Saturday. Our predictions are still to come. Also still to come on TITV, our predictions, as I mentioned, but up first, Texas A&M, and now possibly Missouri. Expansion is coming to a conference near you soon. And could a third set of Tigers be on the Tide's SEC schedule in the future? We'll discuss. Plus, we'll get to your phone calls and emails. You can give us a ring at 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or email us your questions at TITV@WVUATV.com. And still to come, North Texas head coach Dan McCarney had some classy comments following his loss to Alabama. Stay tuned. You're watching the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock. We're back on Tider Insider TV, and there is some news this afternoon that the SEC might be looking to add a 14th team. Of course, the SEC has already extended an invitation to Texas A&M, who's accepted. But according to the Kansas City Star, Missouri, according to the report, has an offer on the table to join the SEC, although according to the report, Missouri has been being allowed to wait to see what happens with the Big 12. Now, I will say this, Charles Bloom of the SEC office has already come out and said that there's no truth to this. So, you know, the report in the Kansas City Star was strictly from someone within the Missouri athletic department. So the SEC denying this, but there's no doubt, Rodney, more expansion is probably coming to the SEC. West Virginia has made no bones about it. They would like to be in the conference. Now, the SEC hasn't been nearly as proactive as other conferences. The Pac-12, or Pac, whatever they seem to be, 14, 16, is really pushing this. Now it started with the ACC. The Big East is going to have to do something because they're losing members to the ACC. But the SEC's been sort of passive in this regard. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I mean, obviously, it seems inevitable that something's going to happen, Gary, and we've heard about Texas A&M, now Missouri, and, you know, how many teams would they possibly add? Could be very interesting. I mean, again, you got Florida State sitting down there. They would seem like a natural. You know, possibly, I don't know what Miami's situation is, but, you know, certainly there are some teams that seem like naturals. There's been talk about Virginia Tech also. So, you know, again, it's going to be interesting to see. Yeah,
no, the case sometimes is these schools like Florida State that seem like naturals, though from a football standpoint, and football is what's driving this bus, let's be honest. Some schools love the idea of being in the SEC, but don't like the idea of having to run that gauntlet every week of playing these SEC teams. So, going to be interesting. You get the feeling that the SEC kind of liked it the way it was with 12 teams. But again, you see what's happening on the national scene, and you have to keep up. So it looks like expansion is going to continue to happen in these major conferences. Well, good, but not good enough. That's what Nick Saban says about the North Texas game. Coming up, we'll evaluate that 41-0 victory. Also, we'll get to your phone calls and your emails. There's the information again on the screen on how you can get in touch with us. Call us with your phone comments and questions at 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or email us at titv@wvuatv.com. Gary Harris, Rodney Orr back with you on Tider Insider TV. Okay, let's recap the game against North Texas, and it's about what we expected it to be, an easy victory. The offense put up 41 points, probably should have had more. The defense, though, pitched a shutout, and that's always a positive. Still, though, there was plenty to improve on. Coach Saban says it's doing the little things that will make your program big time.
I know that's hard for everybody to kind of understand. It's just too simple, and certainly too simple to make a story about. But it is what it is. I can't make it something that it isn't. Block the right guys, works out right. And just like my wife, why did you run that play? Why didn't you run another play? Well, it's what she says, because it didn't work. Should have run a different play. Well, how about if we'd have just run that play right? Because when we ran it right, we made 50 yards. So then she don't have anything to say about that. But
And Dan McCarney, when asked about the Tide, had the following to say, quote, "How much time do you have? They're just a truly amazing football team. I know from coaching on a national championship team at Florida and coaching against the national championship team in Alabama what they're supposed to look like and play like, and they," talking about Alabama, "have it all." So Coach McCartney, who had no, he wasn't, didn't have the wool pulled over his eyes coming in here. He knew what he was going to face, having been at Florida just last year. His team played hard. They'll take a lot out of this game, but certainly he feels like Alabama has the right stuff to bid for the national championship. And again, watching the game on Saturday night, it's clear that the Tide outmanned North Texas, and defensively just ate them up. Offensively, nearly 600 yards of offense, but some concerns, Rodney. The red zone, they had to settle for some field goals, and then a couple of times, Jeremy Shelley, who's a short field goal kicker, missed a couple of field goals. In games against the likes of Arkansas and Florida and LSU, these are areas that need to be straightened out.
Oh, no question about it. You look at Arkansas, Gary, they're 13 of 13 in the red zone. 10 of those have been touchdowns, so they're perfect in the red zone. And you've got to be too. And you don't want to really settle for field goals, but if you have to, you better make them. And again, we talked about this on our radio show last week. One thing that you haven't mentioned, the punting. Mm-hmm. And again, in a game like this, field position certainly big, and punting can be a very crucial thing. So those are two areas of major concern.
Yeah, kick return game has been good. Punt return game has been good. Kick and punt coverage has been good. But again, the place kicking has not been as good as it needs to be, and the punting has been quite poor so far this season. All right, time to go to the phones. And first up tonight, over in Bessemer is John. John, welcome into TITV.
Gary, what's going on, man?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, man, Alabama needs to keep Arkansas off the field. That way we can win. I hope we win, man. Roll Tide.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, Rodney's already alluded to that. I mean, this is a game, like Nick Saban said, both these coaching staffs and these teams, it's pro style on both sides. They approach it that way in terms of their film study, in terms of their preparation. And Nick Saban and Alabama, Jim McElwain offensively, want to control the football, have long drives that end in points, wear down that Arkansas defense, and at the same time keep that Arkansas offense off the field. Now, if a guy breaks a run for 80 yards, certainly that's not a bad thing, but they want to churn some clock, and then at the end of those drives get points.
Yep, they do. And again, I think Alabama's going to probably do exactly what you said, Gary, but I think there's going to be a few new wrinkles. I wouldn't be surprised to see Alabama take a few more shots down the field, too.
And John also asking if Alabama's favored in the game. They are favored, a double-digit favorite, in fact, against the Arkansas Razorbacks on Saturday. All right, let's stay here in Tuscaloosa and talk with Joseph. Joseph, what's going on?
Hey, Gary, Rodney, what's happening?
Hey, Joseph.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that I got all of a sudden starting this past Monday. Now, there's a rumor that, they got us saying Philip Sims is, thinking about transferring. They was talking about that on the job and stuff. And there's some people that claim that they know his fault, but, they say it was talk about transferring.
News to me. I mean, thanks, Joseph, for the call. I haven't heard that. I mean, you know, we're 3 games into the season, and he's a redshirt freshman. Now, you know, if somebody wants to leave and go to another school, that's always their decision. You know, this is a free country, but I have not heard that, and I would be surprised if there's any truth to it. And if a transfer did take place for any player at this point, you'd have to think it would be after the season. There'd be no need to quit now. It wouldn't gain you any extra eligibility or anything like that.
Well, first of all, when you're in a situation like this where you have 2 highly regarded quarterbacks, those are going to be the rumors. But as far as you alluding to his father, certainly I would highly doubt that anyone's family members would talk that about transferring, at least publicly, to anyone else. And it's way too early, like you mentioned, Gary. Certainly, Phillip Sims is just a freshman.
So, Joseph, as you said, they're rumors, and at this point, that's all they seem to be. Certainly nothing that concrete as far as we know. All right, let's go over to center and talk with LD. LD, you're on Titv.
Hey, I'd like to ask you, do you think the Tide is going to stay with a base 3 defense and 4 linebackers, or put a few extra people in the secondary?
All right, LD. Well, first of all, you know, watching the games I've watched, and, you know, I haven't added up the snaps, but I think Alabama's probably been in an even front more this year than they've been in a 3-man front, to be honest with you. Either Hightower has had his hand on the ground or someone else. You know, they certainly, I think, has been in a 4-man front as often as they've been in a 3-man front. And as far as bringing pressure, you know, Nick Saban and Kirby Smart are renowned as 2 of the best in the country at bringing extra guys, more guys than the offense can block. But they're multiple, LD. So you're going to see, I wouldn't be shocked if they started out with 5 DBs. They've done that oftentimes, started out in a nickel package. You know, they're going to change it around. They're going to try to keep Arkansas guessing, just like Arkansas is going to try to catch Alabama in a disadvantage and take advantage of it for them offensively. That's just the way these 2 coaches are going to go at it.
You remember 2 years ago, of course, Mallett, maybe Wilson moves a little bit better. That's not saying much because Mallett could barely move at all, but they lit Mallett up very early with Eric Anders coming off the corner after him, kind of to get him out of rhythm real early. Again, that was Mallett's first big-time game. Of course, he had been at Michigan and played in some, but first one at Arkansas. And then you look at Tyler Wilson, Gary, and again, I know he did well in mop-up roles last year. He's played against Missouri State, New Mexico, and Troy this year. I mean, that's nothing compared to what he's going to see Saturday, just the atmosphere. And then you would expect that Alabama certainly would try to, you know, kind of get into his head early with some pressures. And again, you would think that it would be some things that he had never seen.
Yeah, LD, they're going to mix it up. They're going to try to get after the quarterback. All right, we'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back on Titv. Everybody hyped up this week. It's been a nice 3-game run for Alabama to get the season started, but finally the SEC is here. All right, let's take an email. This is from Ray over in Glencoe, Alabama. Do you think Alabama will open things up more on offense as the season progresses? And that's a good question, Ray. I mean, because I do. To be perfectly honest with you, I think Alabama has had a plan early on to establish their quarterback position, to play a lot of people on offense, kind of find out where their playmakers are, tweak the offensive line. But the one thing they haven't done is really take a lot of shots down the field throwing the football. AJ's now getting more comfortable. He's proving that he can make the right reads. I do think, and maybe in this game Saturday, they're going to take some shots down the field throwing the football.
Well, that's just what I said a couple of minutes ago. I really expect them to do that. But, you know, what I'd really like to see is Alabama get that running game consistently going because nothing works better. That's what Alabama is, a power running team. You look at Eddie Lacy and Trent Richardson. Those 2 guys get going, Gary. It'd be very hard to stop. Then you use McCarron throwing over that, and it, you know, again, they could be very difficult to stop. And you look at Alabama, they use the wide receivers. They've been using the tight ends. We saw Smelly last week. Michael Williams has been involved quite a bit. So, again, you know, this offense has a lot of potential. It's going to be, as I mentioned earlier, interesting to see how much it develops over the course.
Real quickly, Dale, we don't have a lot of time. What's going on?
Not much, guys. I heard Coach Saban talking about his concern of a lack of a pass rush from the defensive line, and I just saw LaMichael Fanning at Fan Day, and I just wondered if we might see him playing, or is he going to be redshirted?
Good-looking prospect, no doubt about it. You know, you have to guess at this point. Anything can change. They played Brad Smelly after 6 games a few years ago, but I would guess right now, barring injury, that LaMichael Fanning is probably going to redshirt.
Yeah, Dale, you're right. I think he does have all the tools, but again, I think it'll probably be maybe next year before we see him.
All right, timeout here on the program. We'll be back with predictions right after this.
What the players don't understand, they really don't understand, is I usually raise more Cain on weeks like last week because the players will be all crumped up this week. Is that the right terminology? I'm not sure I'm up with the hip-hop term.
Well, I don't know if our John Huddleston's up with the hip-hop term. I think now, I could be wrong, I think crunk is with a K when you're crunked. But I guess it could go either way. You crunked up?
I'm crunked up.
All right, let's get to it. Prediction time, Alabama and Arkansas.
Well, you know, Gary, when I look at this game, I kind of look back to last year. Arkansas had a great opportunity to beat Alabama there in Fayetteville. Ryan Mallett, they had an outstanding offense, certainly. And Alabama was green defensively. 9 new starters. The secondary still hadn't gotten their feet under. They were kind of green. And Arkansas only managed 20 points. You know, I just don't see Arkansas doing much better against this Alabama defense, 27-20.
You know, I like Arkansas's team like a lot of people. I think they're a really good football team. Preseason, I was actually more concerned about the Penn State game just because of being the second game, being on the road, breaking in a young quarterback. Right now, I feel like Alabama has their feet under them a little bit. And I think Arkansas, again, is a good football team, but playing in Bryant-Denny Stadium, I mean, I think Alabama's better. And I just don't see an upset happening. I think the Tide will get it done again. 27-17. I think the defense for Alabama is really good, and I think they'll hold down that Arkansas offense and get the W. But that's why they play the game, and we'll find out on Saturday afternoon at 2:30. All right, it's dinner time. Rodney and I and the rest of the TV crew are heading out to Buddy's Rib and Steak in Northport. Come join us for dinner. Don't forget, if you missed any of the show, you can find it on our website, WVUATV.com. We'll have the full telecast posted later on this evening. Thanks for watching. See you next week. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. So long, everybody.